All right. Participants are pouring in. So many folks, highly punctual. I love it. Hey, people want tools to protect their clean energy investments and democracy as we know it. I'm so excited. Hi, folks. As you saw as you joined, we've increased our security a little bit. So we're going to give it a minute for folks to find their authentication codes and come on into the webinar. But we have a great lineup of speakers for you. We have hundreds of participants rolling in, and we're so excited to talk with you today about how you can use your voice to help protect critical climate and clean energy investments that are actively under threat in Congress. All right, our speakers are rolling in.
Hey, everybody.
Hi. Hello, Lieutenant Governor. Nice to see you.
Mandela works.
Hi, Mandela. Nice to see you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, you too.
I'm Lena.
Perfect.
I'm Evergreen's Executive Director. This
Yeah,
is
it's great to
Courtney.
see
We've
you.
got Maisie. Yeah, nice to see you too. How's the weather where you are?
It's not that bad. Actually, it's not. Wow, it's 47 now.
Is that balmy for you,
Yeah, like
Wisconsinites?
I went out to run this morning. It was like 32. So
Oh, warming
yeah.
up quickly. Yeah, we've been having the big swings here in DC. It like
hmm
dropped in like 30 degrees a couple days ago, and then a bunch of trees blew over. So all the apocalypse things happening. Well, I'm glad it's warm where you are. Let's give it one more minute. We're waiting on
Okay.
the Congresswoman,
hmm
and then we will dive in. Courtney, how's the weather where you are?
Not much different than Wisconsin down here in south of Chicago, around 40 degrees. So not too bad for us Midwesterners.
Yeah, I would imagine you all are out in shorts. You're so tough out there.
Coming up for sure.
All right, well, we're coming up on 2:03 here, so let's go ahead and dive in. Thank you all so much for joining us today. As I said, I'm Lena Moffett. I'm the Executive Director at Evergreen Action. I'll be your host for this get together. We're so excited to talk with you about this incredible moment in which we find ourselves and explain how you all can get involved and use your voices to protect crucial climate and clean energy programs that we know are under attack. We're also going to talk about some of the bigger dynamics that are at play here, some of these really unprecedented things that we are seeing, and again, how you can use your voices to stand up. First and foremost, let me introduce our incredible panel here. We're so thrilled to have the former Lieutenant Governor of the great state of Wisconsin, Mandela Barnes, or Mandela, as he has allowed us all to call him, who now leads Forward Together Wisconsin, an organization focused on helping communities use climate and infrastructure investments from the Inflation Reduction Act, the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, to create good paying union jobs, improve infrastructure, lower energy bills, and much, much more. The former lieutenant governor's journey into public service was inspired by his parents, a public school teacher and a United Auto Workers member, instilling in him the values of economic justice, racial equity, and sustainability. His professional life began early, working as a political field organizer during President Barack Obama's 2008 campaign, later serving as a community organizer with Milwaukee Inner City Congregations Allied with Hope, MICA, and eventually representing the 11th District in the Wisconsin State Assembly from 2013 to 2017. His tenure as the 45th Lieutenant Governor of Wisconsin from 2019 to 2023 marked him as the first African American to hold the position, reflecting his commitment to breaking barriers and fostering inclusive progress. Mandela, we're so honored to have you with us. We work across the country and just can't think of a group doing more to directly help folks connect with these resources and build programs to enhance economic justice. And it's such a model for other groups to follow. And we're so excited to have you with us today. Thanks for making time for us.
Thanks so much for having me. It's really exciting what you all been doing for quite some time. I've been following the work of Evergreen since you all launched, and to be able to partner
Aw.
with you, not just today. I got this event back here, which you all were supportive of, and to be in this moment coming full circle, I'm just really excited to talk about reasons why we can have some hope and optimism in what seems just completely daunting.
Here, here. And I always love to meet another kid of a public school teacher and union member. So I can just tell we're going to be fast friends. So excited to get to chat with you. And thanks for your kind words about Evergreen. All right, speaking of Evergreen, I'm going to introduce a couple of our other fantastic team members who are going to share their expertise with y'all today. First, we've got Courtney Brady, our Deputy Director for the Midwest region with Evergreen States Program, where Courtney helps advocate for and implement state climate policy. Prior to joining Evergreen, Courtney led communications for RMI's public policy work, particularly focused on the Inflation Reduction Act. She also led communications on Sierra Club's conservation work, and she worked on state policy issues with Sierra Club's Michigan chapter. Courtney and I got to work together at the Sierra Club together, and I can certainly attest to her skills. She holds a master's degree from the University of Chicago and a bachelor's from Michigan State University. Courtney, thank you also for taking the lead on building this toolkit after hearing from folks on the ground about what would be useful. I'm so excited to see us put this to work today. Welcome, Courtney.
Thanks so much, Lena. Yeah, thrilled to be here and just such a critical moment for local and state leaders to really be engaged in what's happening federally. So excited to talk about this today.
Here, here. Thanks, Courtney. And next we have Maisie Dean. Dean's Evergreen's government affairs advocate who handles so much of our congressional and administrative outreach. Prior to joining our team, Maisie worked on the Hill for almost 5 years for members on the House Energy and Commerce and House Natural Resources Committee. She's worked on Democratic and presidential and congressional campaigns. And originally from the DMV area, she graduated from the College of Charleston in Charleston, South Carolina, where she studied psychology and political science. And Maisie, you are so good at building effective relationships with members of Congress and helping folks get in there and talk to them. And we're so excited to learn from you today. Welcome, Maisie.
Thank you, Lena. It's wonderful to be here with y'all today. And as all of us have noted, it's a very important moment for this conversation. So really excited to dive in with y'all and hopefully provide some insights, answer some questions, and have a great conversation.
Fantastic. And I'm so excited to see that we have the fabulous Representative Melanie Stansbury joining us. Let me go ahead and introduce her and let her say a couple words, and then we'll get to some housekeeping and we'll get to our presentation. Representative Stansbury is, of course, the representative for my hometown district in New Mexico. Raised in New Mexico, Representative Stansbury has dedicated her career to finding solutions to water issues, poverty, and climate change, representing the state first in the state legislature and now in Congress. She's a champion of efforts to address hunger, food, and water insecurity, conservation and climate change, and economic development and recovery issues. Prior to becoming a legislator, Congresswoman Stansbury worked in communities across the state as a STEM educator, researcher on land and water issues, and served as a staffer in the U.S. Senate Committee on Energy and Natural Resources and in the White House Office of Management and Budget, an office we are hearing so much about these days. She's working hard to uplift voices of communities and tackle our biggest challenges from economic development to climate change. Congresswoman Stansbury serves on the House Committee on Natural Resources and the ever so important House Committee on Oversight and Accountability. Congresswoman Stansbury, thank you so much for joining us. You have been making us New Mexicans so proud, just kicking butt on all of the media across the country lately. And I was just watching you on MSNBC, and thank you so much for your leadership, for your bravery, for standing up and fighting back for so many of these programs we care about, and for making time to share your wisdom with us today. Welcome, welcome.
Hey there. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I hope we can share some wisdom and the spirit of fight, because that's what we're going to need. So I look forward to the conversation.
Here, here. Absolutely. Okay, great. So before we go any further, just a couple of housekeeping notes. Thank you all again for joining us. We've got so many participants on the line. Thanks for introducing yourselves in the chat there. Love to see where you all are beaming in from. No surprise, people from across the country want tools to help fight back. And I'm so thrilled to see the response that we've gotten to this toolkit. Okay, so first we're going to spend the next 30 minutes or so hearing from our incredible speakers, and then we're going to save time at the end to have Q&A. Hopefully we're going to get all of your questions answered. If you have them while we are talking, go ahead and use the Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen, and we will do everything we can, again, to make sure your questions are answered. And then check this out. My team just told me about this today. We've gotten fancy here. If you click on the resources button at the bottom of the screen, you actually can go up and see that there are 3 tabs. And in the middle, if you click documents, you can download our toolkit at any time. So if you want to get ahead of the game, start looking at that toolkit, start looking at the talking points and information we have in there about how you can advocate with your member of Congress, go ahead and click on that resources button. But with that, let's go ahead and dive in. Okay, Rep. Stansbury, I know we may only have you for a few minutes, so let me give you the first couple of questions here. Ultimately, we want to talk about threats to the climate and clean energy programs within the Inflation Reduction Act. Of course, that was the bill with the key programs for addressing climate, speeding our transition to clean energy, the biggest investment in climate change that our country had ever made. And of course, under huge attack, both from the administration and from Congress. And I think it's important just to set the stage with that for a moment. We saw this administration illegally freeze not just these programs that were already legally flowing from the Inflation Reduction Act, but $3 trillion in federal funds a few weeks ago. A lot of those funds are currently unfrozen, but their unwillingness to follow the law, their heedless willingness to jump in and freeze funds that have already been legally appropriated by Congress is a huge threat. And first, I wanted to say thank you to you and Democratic leaders for standing up and helping push back on that. That's the first threat we want to talk about. And then second, we're going to get to the threat that's coming from your fellow members of Congress across the aisle who want to gut these programs. So as someone who actually sits in these hallowed halls of power, you understand exactly how important this moment is for defending not just these programs that we're going to talk about, but also for defending the systems of checks and balances that our democracy really depends on. So what's your take about how we can help you all be as effective as possible in pushing back against that threat we're seeing from the executive branch and their willingness to unlawfully shut down programs you all have already appropriated, including these climate and clean energy programs?
Yeah, well, I think probably the best way to present the case to you all of how we think you can help support the effort to fight back is to answer it in three parts, and I'll try to do this as quickly as possible. The first is to describe what's going on so that you have the full scope. The second is to talk about what actions Congress and Democrats are doing currently to push back, and then where we see opportunities for the public, states, tribes, local governments, and the public to do their part as members of this great, amazing, diverse democracy that we belong to. So let me start with the first piece, which is what exactly is happening. I want to just start by saying this is not normal. Every administration comes in and has a difference in perspective from the previous administration over what spending priorities should be, what policy priorities should be, but we have never seen anything like what this administration is doing in dismantling not just policies and priorities, but also the institutions themselves and challenging the legality of those institutions. So on the first day in office, the first 24 hours, Donald Trump signed over 200 executive actions, including repealing a huge swath of Biden initiatives that included initiatives around climate, resilience, environmental justice, social justice. And so that was kind of the first big blow. He also signed an executive order essentially asking for a freeze and a review of, I won't even use their language, but essentially some very unfriendly language around environmental initiatives, climate initiatives, and what they're attacking as diversity, equity, and inclusion, which they kind of put all together. And it's very clear that this administration has a point of view about government that is very much informed by a personal ideology about their view of the world. And it's not just anti-climate, it's anti-diversity, it's well, there's so much I could say. In any case, they signed an executive order that put into motion a series of funding freezes. It started with a memo that came from OMB basically saying to stop funding all these things. That was deemed illegal immediately. Within a week, the courts weighed in on two lawsuits, one brought by the states and one brought by nonprofits, basically saying that the impoundment of these funds was illegal. A lot of the IRA money got stuck in that. In addition to that, they started to dismantle actual agencies. I think USAID is the poster child for that. The Consumer Finance Bureau is another one. But they are also dismantling sections of agencies which have not made as much news, including obviously Department of Education and others. That is illegal. They cannot do that. It violates authorizations for those programs. It violates appropriations laws. It violates personnel laws. It violates the separation of powers. Then we saw a slew of mass firings. They initially put a huge amount of agency staff on administrative leave, especially anyone who was working on both these climate programs, environmental programs, and so-called DEI initiatives. And then they began mass firing of both those individuals, as well as 2 weeks ago, a mass firing of anybody who was in their current job for less than a year or 2 years on a probationary period. That means that over, I think 20,000 people were immediately terminated, and they're saying that up to 200,000 will be impacted by these probationary firings. They also started mass firings of just regular staff through the normal RIF process over the last few weeks. So basically what we're seeing is this illegal dismantling of the federal government. On every count, it's illegal. They don't have the authority to do it, but the only way to stop them right now is to go to the courts. Now, a lot of people are asking us, well, why aren't they just, if it's illegal, why aren't people arresting Elon Musk? Why aren't they trying to impeach or use other tools against the president? There's two reasons. One, they're breaking federal law. And you need the Department of Justice, who is the trustee for the federal government, to go after folks who are breaking federal law. Well, the Trump administration controls the Department of Justice. And so not only are they not pursuing legal action against the illegal breaking of these laws, they're enabling it. They're also using the DOJ to intimidate members of the public, as well as members of Congress who are calling into question their illegal activity. And they genuinely believe that if they can manage to get these cases to the Supreme Court, that the court will find in favor of Donald Trump, because they have this theory of the Constitution that he can do anything he wants. And it's based roughly on the Supreme Court ruling from last summer. So basically where that leaves us is that Congress has organized itself into some task forces to leverage every ounce of power that we have. Right now, House Democrats are in the minority by 3 seats, which means all we need is 3 Republicans to have a backbone and believe in the Constitution to actually stop them in the House, or to win a special election, or to win the midterms. It's also why we cannot impeach, because we do not have a majority. So this is a congressional action that requires a majority of votes. And in the Senate, we also are in the minority. So what power does Congress have? We have the power of the bully pulpit. We have the power of leveraging our votes. We have the power of using floor actions to stall. We have the power of using committees to do oversight, and we have oversight tools. So we're doing that through every possible avenue that we can. And we're working with, where we can, our Republicans to help push back. This is a key point that everyone really needs to understand. Republicans know that these are deeply unpopular policies. All you have to do is get on X and see that most Republicans who are still doing public events right now are getting attacked by their own constituents. These are not paid protesters. These are just regular people who are super pissed off about what's going on. Republicans are telling us behind closed doors that they're very upset about what's going on. They're calling the White House, they're calling cabinet secretaries, they are pushing back. So keep the heat on our Republican colleagues. If you live in a Republican district, call them, show up to their office, write them letters. Just be relentless, because they need to hear from you, especially if you have relationships with them. And even if they're not going to publicly take a stand, which I doubt they will because of the electoral power of the Trump administration, they are quietly making those calls. And we believe that some of those calls have had major impacts in a positive direction over the last couple of weeks. So please keep up the heat there. And I will say this on the IRA specifically. Utilities want this money, and utilities are very bipartisan. Republicans understand that they need their utilities to function. So I would really focus in on that piece of the equation, because a lot of Republicans don't know what's in the IRA. They've just drank the Kool-Aid that it's some airy-fairy climate thing. They don't understand that it is actual incentives for key infrastructure that they need. Secondly, we're using the courts. Congress does not have standing to actually bring lawsuits in the courts, but our states do, our tribes do, local governments have standing, and nonprofits and individuals. If you are an entity that has had your funds withheld, you have standing. So one of the things that you can do is you can actually join some of the lawsuits that are already happening, or you could consider litigation on your own. The state district attorney generals, the state attorney generals are meeting literally daily on state lawsuits. And the NGO leading most of the NGO court cases is Democracy Forward. If you would like to connect with them, if you've had funds frozen, you've had staff laid off, whatever the harm is to your entity, feel free to reach out and we can connect you with the people doing the work in the courts. Finally, our communities. At the end of the day, they want us to feel disempowered, and the fight in our communities is really essential right now. And so I think it's really important that people walk away from calls like this with a sense of knowledge and empowerment about what you specifically can do in your community to fight back. And let me just give you what my quick list is, and then I'll stop talking. I would put them in 3 buckets. I'm a bucketer. Here are things that everyday folks can do in their community, whether you belong to a nonprofit or you're part of a formal institution. One are institutional actions. Push Congress. Right now, Congress is considering a huge budget reconciliation package that would essentially blow a hole in our deficit and would take away critical programs like Medicare, Medicaid, income supports, food assistance. It's basically an attack on programs that help low-income people. And they would like to include in reconciliation language that would repeal much of the IRA. We need members of Congress on the Senate side and on the House side who are Republicans to understand that their constituents do not support this, and especially key constituencies, not just, yes, everyday folks, but especially constituencies that they listen to, utilities, manufacturers, people in their districts who are business owners, people who they listen to, they maybe even be donors in their world. So think about how you can connect to powerful voices that can influence our Republican colleagues so that they can weigh in the reconciliation process. The Democrats, we're on your side, you guys. We're going to do it. We're going to fight tooth and nail, but we don't have the votes. So that's why mobilizing in our communities is key. Same with the administration. Get in these folks' ears. If you've got a business leader in your community that is getting a grant from Commerce, call the Commerce Secretary. Like the administration, these cabinet secretaries, I'm going to be real with you guys, they're just as pissed off at Elon Musk as the rest of us. They don't like what he's doing either. So the administration needs to be hearing from us as well, because a lot of what's driving this action is not the administration as a whole. Frankly, it's Elon Musk and his takeover of OPM. In terms of the courts, if you have a court concern or consideration, you can go to the court yourself. But if you have a legal team or you're part of a legal network, you can also help support these efforts. We need an army of lawyers to be helping to push back. I also think it's really critical right now, my final institutional bucket, which is to push state and local and tribal governments to take action now to protect both vulnerable funding as well as vulnerable populations. And in New Mexico, our state legislature is currently in session. They're currently putting money away in the bank just in case they cut Medicaid and these other programs, because we can't leave our citizens vulnerable. Similarly, states are taking action to protect immigrant populations, LGBTQ plus populations. So push your state and local governments to take action now to protect funds and vulnerable populations. Second bucket for action, collective action. People are asking, is it helpful to march in the streets? It is helpful to be visible and loud. For me personally, Personally, I am directing my collective action efforts to protest in places and spaces where the storytelling can be elevated to help push action. So, there's so many different ways to take collective action. Think about where your time and talents can be most impactful. Help support each other. This kind of mutual aid, both at the institutional level as well as targeted communities, is super helpful. Donating to causes, and I'm going to add this, even though it's not relevant to this call: run for office. And then finally, I'm going to say this. I think a lot of people are feeling very disempowered and scared right now. And I think the most important thing that every single American who feels that way right now can do is to engage in an everyday act of resistance. If we do not participate in the illegal activities that they are doing, if we do not stay silent, and if we continue to do the work, to show up, to continue to support our communities, they will not win. And they are already losing. You can see it all over the news. So figure out what you can do in your own life to be a part of the resistance and to help the people, organizations, and institutions around you, to help protect them, to help them remain resilient, and to stay in the fight. So with that, I'll turn it back.
Oh, thank you so much, Congresswoman. I'm resisting the urge to clap for you here, sitting alone in my office, but I am so proud to have a leader like you representing my hometown. And you're doing New Mexicans proud all over the place. Honestly, going up against someone like Donald Trump, who is dragging our country towards a dictatorship so much more quickly than many of us anticipated, and you going on the airwaves and calling it like it is and saying that what they are doing is illegal, and then helping people like the hundreds of folks who are on this call stand up and use their voices to fight back in a way that is working is just so incredibly inspiring. So thank you for your leadership and for your bravery and for continuing to go out there and fight the good fight. And we are, if you can, activate your communities and push your local leaders to get engaged too. I was taking notes, so we're going to carry that back. Thank you so much, Congresswoman. I know we only have you maybe for another minute, but anything else you want to say about what you are seeing is working on the hills of power up there, or do we have to let you go now?
Yeah, just keep raising your voices. I mean, that's it. That they're not going to win. They know what they're doing. And I think every day that passes, the reality of what they're doing, I think we all kind of like collectively forgot what a shyster Donald Trump was. I mean, like now Elon Musk is giving himself private contracts out of the federal government, and we're hearing there's going to be more daily. Like, I think Americans got a bit lulled and were exhausted over the last few months and needed time to regroup and figure out what was going on again, but they're not going to win. So just keep raising your voices and keep going out there and fighting. Do not fall into the trap of despair. Just keep working, because we will ultimately prevail.
Thank you so much, Congresswoman. All right, well, Godspeed in the fight out there. We appreciate you. Thank you so much for joining us, and we will take your words to heart here. With that, we're going to turn to Mandela. Thank you so much for being with us. And speaking of incredible stories that folks can lift up and send to their members of Congress and into the administration and to their local leaders, you and the organization that you lead, Forward Together with Wisconsin, are working hand in hand with folks in communities in Wisconsin that are directly benefiting from programs from the Inflation Reduction Act, from other federal programs that are critical to folks' lives. And I'm wondering if you might share with us a little bit about these programs that you are seeing on the ground, empowering folks, and things that they should lift up as they contact their members of Congress.
For sure. And just want to say thanks again for having me. Thank you, Representative Stansberry. Thank you for your work in DC, because it is greatly needed and certainly appreciated. And thank you to Evergreen for having me today. And you talked about us working with groups on the ground that are working to tap into IRA funding, and we're there to help guide them along the way. So I started Forward Together Wisconsin about 2 years ago now, a little over 2 years. And it was because of the IRA and the fact that so many people with so many good intentions and so many people who could also stand to gain a whole lot from the provisions in the IRA had zero idea about how to access those benefits. It is a very tangled web, still that way. And things are even more uncertain now. But even after passage, we knew that implementation would certainly be a challenge for all of us, even those who've been seasoned in the sustainability space, even those who've been seasoned in the policy arena. And with that, I wanted to make sure that it was as easy as possible for people to access these once in a generation, if not once in a lifetime, benefits to curb the impacts of climate change, to reduce our emissions. I'm not sure if you can read the sign behind me, but making sustainable attainable. That's what we stand for in multiple ways. One, translating, cutting through the noise to make it plain for people, but also ensuring that people with fewest amount of resources also have access to these benefits. Think about the potential dichotomy of higher income households paying lower energy costs while lower income households are paying higher energy costs. I know that will be certainly counter to the interests of the Inflation Reduction Act and certainly counter to the interests of people who are here on the call today. And it's important for us to be able to lead with equity in mind, but it does take a deliberate set of actions to make sure that that equity stands. And so I'm incredibly proud of the work that's been going on here in the state. It was a lot of course correction over the last 8 years, and we've been a pioneer in green homes for decades. And my organization, Forward Together Wisconsin, is on a mission to bring these opportunities to every single community across Wisconsin. We're the very first state in the country to launch our home energy improvement program through our focus on energy. And we've personally seen how families are able to benefit from these programs directly. Our partner organization, Green Homeowners United, helps homeowners improve their properties with renewable energy, energy efficiency retrofits, and also water saving opportunities. And this has helped Wisconsinites tap into about $100,000 worth of tax credits so far that were also signed into law as a part of the federal clean energy program. And we were able to set up a revolving loan program that's covered energy assessments for many of these homes, and homeowners continue to apply for this program. In Baraboo, the school district worked with a local electrical construction company to install 2 solar arrays. And these arrays have generated more than $80,000 in utility bill savings. And the district received a rebate of more than $153,000 for that project alone. And there are other schools in Wisconsin that have taken advantage of direct pay. In Menasha, the school district is using direct pay to reduce the price tag on a new net zero intermediate school. They're working with apprentices from the sheet metal workers, Local 18 on the project, and they're also meeting high road labor standards. And the district anticipates receiving a $3.8 million reimbursement from the federal government. And then there's the Northland Pines School District in northern Wisconsin that received a $111,000 check for its project to add solar array at one of its elementary schools. So we are proud to work with even more school districts, more organizations, nonprofits, businesses, you name it, in order to help the state of Wisconsin meet our individual clean energy goals. I should say, not meet those goals, to accelerate those goals as the crisis continues to get even worse, but also in this moment, doing everything that we can to do the education piece for sure. But my background is in organizing. That means making sure that people from all over the state, regardless of their political affiliation, regardless of their profession, where they're coming from in life, understand exactly what's going on and know what their members of Congress are or are not doing on this issue, and how each person that seeks to strip away provisions from the Inflation Reduction Act is a person who is attempting to add even higher costs to folks' energy bills, their utility bills. And there is a role of holding folks accountable who choose to take that path. And we're all about it. We're a part of it. We're going to be leading, organizing work to make it happen.
Oh, that is so inspiring. Thank you, Mandela. And it's so fantastic to hear about these programs and the benefits that they're delivering, while all just also incredibly frustrating to think about the talking points from Republicans who are attacking these programs as, wasteful or inefficient, when like you are seeing cheaper energy, lowered pollution, schools that are able to save on their bills and protect school children with clean air. It's just these triple, and create good jobs while you're at it, these triple wins that these programs are delivering. And to hear about Congress then wanting to cut these and cut programs like Medicaid to be able to send a tax cut to rich folks and continue subsidies for big oil, I will say just makes me double down on my determination to push back and keep telling these stories about how effective these programs are and how they really are delivering for folks in a way that I genuinely believe Americans want. We want cleaner air for our kids. We want a safe place for our kids to be able to go to school. And these are the kinds of things that the folks, thanks to your awesome work, are starting to see really work in their communities. So thank you so much for that. I love hearing those stories and opportunities for folks to lift them up to their members of Congress. Okay, so speaking of those opportunities, Maisie, I want to go to you for a moment to share some of your incredible expertise with us, helping us break down the arcane processes of Capitol Hill. So let's, for a moment, be optimistic and say that we are going to get this administration to commit to adhering to the rule of law and being willing to release those funds that Congress legally appropriates. Okay, so let's say we're living in that world where we still have the rule of law and checks and balances. Next up, we have to fight back against the attacks that Republicans are bringing to these incredible programs through Congress and through the spending bills and through reconciliation that are upcoming. So we thought it would be helpful for folks to just understand what the heck these budget processes, what reconciliation is and how it works, because a lot of folks have never engaged directly with this process. So why don't I hand it over to you and you can lay it out a little bit and then we can give some folks some tools for engaging. Take it away, Maisie.
Awesome. Thanks, Lena. And thanks for giving me the platform of optimism to launch off on. So in a moment,
Mandela, were you wanting to jump back in for a
No,
moment? I'm sorry, I should
I
have
think I'm
handed it
still on
back
the
to
live
you.
screen, not Maisie.
Oh, no worries.
You gotta get
Thank
the
you
right
for
person
letting
on
us
there.
know. I can see
you can move
Maisie,
your
but
mouth
Mandela.
and
Yeah.
okay, well, I'll just dive in. Hopefully folks can hear me. Can everyone hear me? Okay.
We can totally hear you. And I
Great.
think we can see you now too. Thank you, Mandela, for that. And we will come back to you for more discussion in a moment. All right, go ahead, Maisie. Thank you.
Okay, awesome. So in a moment, I'm gonna walk folks through the reconciliation process so you can understand sort of the high level nuts and bolts of what is going on in Congress and why this advocacy matters most right now. But I first just want to underscore some of what has already been said about why this matters generally. And if there is one thing I can impress upon you, it's the value of the exact type of outreach that y'all are especially positioned to do. We are facing threats at the congressional level to the Inflation Reduction Act program that so many are benefiting from, as the representative has already discussed some of these threats. But I want to talk about how important congressional advocacy and building long-term relationships with your electeds is. This congressional advocacy is about two things. It's building public voice and holding electeds accountable. And when you think about it, it's very simple because it is the job of our elected officials to represent their constituents, though I know it may not always feel like that. What all too often happens is that big lobbying groups like the oil and gas industry in this case win out because they have more resources. But the more elected officials are hearing from their constituents, the more they know that people are watching. And that means they're going to be held accountable, especially at the polls, which we know is of paramount importance to them. And I should also note that in addition to holding Congress accountable, it also helps for members of Congress to know when they're doing the right thing. So it's always good to show your support for good actors in addition to voicing your opposition and pushing for things that you don't want them to do. And some of you are probably regulars at this already, and I thank you for your work and urge you to keep it up. But for those of us who are new to this, it can feel overwhelming and intimidating and extremely discouraging at times. As someone who started reaching out to my representatives early on in life, I understand what it means to feel like you're sort of screaming into the void. And also, as someone who has worked in Congress as a legislative correspondent, I know what happens on the other side. And the answer is that people are listening. It was my job to sort through all of the mail, electronic and physical, and go through the voicemails and report back to my boss what we were hearing from constituent groups. So while not every office is created equal, I will say that someone is on the other line, other end of the line, listening to what you have to say. And just because you're not getting a response doesn't mean you're not making an impact. And if members are not hearing from constituents, then they have an easier time focusing on the priorities of industry, because those are always going to be the voices with the most resources, i.e., they are always going to be vocal about what they want. But constituents have the real leverage here because they have the power of the vote. And the more your members of Congress are hearing from their constituents, both in their actual districts and also just across the state, and especially business owners, organizations in the state, the more that they know you are paying attention and you have demands on them, which you should, because again, this is their job. And the more they know that they need to listen in order to be able to keep their jobs. So in this context, it is vitally important that you make it known that you are benefiting from these programs and you will not let them take away what is benefiting communities in their district. Don't make it easy for them to claim ignorance to how these programs are benefiting their hometowns. Use your voice and make it personal. I loved everything Mandela said about telling the stories of real community benefits. That is what works in offices for members of Congress. That is what resonates. I've seen time and time again how valuable putting a face and name to a program is. So highlighting these real stories is of paramount importance because it raises the stakes, and that is critical when it comes to building public voice. And it puts into perspective what will be lost and the real costs if they do act in a way that would claw back certain programs. Courtney, I know, is going to walk you through our great toolkit in a moment, which includes some tactics for strong advocacy, but I'll share with you the reason that these provisions, which Congress already passed into law, are even on the line, and why right now and over these next few months is such a critical moment for influence. As Representative Stansbury already covered, Republicans in the House and Senate are currently trying to pass Trump's agenda, which includes tax cuts for billionaires and a repeal of the IRA. And they are doing this using a tool called budget reconciliation, which we actually just conveniently put a blog out on today that we can share with y'all in our follow-up materials. This is a complicated process that essentially lets Congress bypass the Senate rules to overcome the filibuster and pass legislation, allowing the party in control to pass bills with a 51-vote simple majority. And Republicans know that using this tool is their best opportunity to repeal the popular IRA to pay for Trump's tax cuts. The bill must affect the federal budget, so it must influence the amount of money that the government spends and takes in, which is kind of where the IRA comes in. But the first step of reconciliation is passing a budget resolution, which is what we saw chambers in both, members in both chambers do in the past couple of weeks. Importantly, the House and Senate did not pass the same resolution, which they must do in order to move on to reconciliation, where they actually write the policy. I think I saw somebody in the chat say, bring up the IRA and how they passed that originally. Correct. This is the process by which they did that. So they now need to reconcile the two bills that have been passed, which is expected to take some time because there are significant disagreements amongst Republicans about what this final resolution should look like. The House wants Trump's one big beautiful bill track, and that's the version that is most directly threatening to the IRA at the present moment. The Senate wants to take a trimmed down approach for the first resolution, but eventually, if changes are made, which we expect there will be, because as I mentioned, there's not an agreement across both chambers, the consolidated version will have to then go back through Congress and pass through both chambers. And because the House is adamant about tackling all of Trump's legislative priorities in one bill, even after they pass this one budget resolution, it will be a long road because crafting a bill that large and then gathering all the votes to pass it is a big task, especially in this political environment.
Which
So
I think is a good potential pivot to talk about the importance of making sure that folks are picking up the phone and using this toolkit. So sorry to cut you off, Maisie, but I want to make sure that we save enough time for Courtney to walk us through the toolkit and to make sure that we're able to get to some questions. So we will come back, both Maisie to you and to Mandela, to hear more from you. But Courtney, I want to give you time to walk us through this toolkit because, as Maisie was noting, this is a critical juncture that we are at, both for engaging to showcase that at the highest level, we need this administration to adhere to the law, release funds that are already appropriated, and when new bills come down the line, protect these clean energy programs. We want to hear from folks who are going to engage with Republicans and Democratic members, and Courtney is going to tell you exactly how to do that with our toolkit. Take it away, Courtney.
Great. Thanks so much, Maisie and Lena. So I'll be really quick here. Lena already gave a great overview of kind of the asks that really need to be directed towards Congress right now, which are compel the administration to follow the law, release the funds, and tell Congress to protect the IRA investments coming down. The toolkit really breaks this down into three big buckets. So first is just identifying who to talk to in Congress. First and foremost, contact your federal delegation. They want to hear about what's happening in your state. They want to hear more directly about the investments coming down, and that can really compel them to be advocates for these programs when the negotiations are happening. And secondly, we give you an overview of who are the key committees that are deciding what's going to happen with the budget, and congressional leadership. Those are two really important targets for this. We need the Democrats in leadership to be on the defense, and we need the key committees to really understand what's at stake here. So first, identify your targets. Secondly, crafting your message. So giving you the tools to understand what your congressman or congresswoman cares about and kind of how to tailor messages to them that will really resonate. And we have a bunch of talking points in here that are based on best tested polling that appeal to both Democrats, who are, of course, we want them to defend, and then Republicans who need to understand what's at stake. And they can really be persuaded through messages like global competitiveness for the United States or energy security, which the IRA really bolsters for the country. And then the third is really just tactically, what is your engagement plan? And we outline a bunch of different ways you can do that. So everything from scripts for calling your members of Congress to template invites to take them on site visits to IRA projects in your community. That is going to really resonate if people can understand directly what's happening in their community. I'm sure that's already happening in the great work going on in Wisconsin. So we think that that is one of the most fruitful tactics in the next couple weeks here. And I just want to point out really quickly that, of course, it's hard to engage Republicans historically on climate issues. We know that. The IRA is different. This is an economic and climate bill, and it is not a lost cause. For instance, the congressman in my hometown in Michigan 10, John James, has been in the media recently expressing concerns over repealing EV tax credits in particular because of what it means for the auto industry. That is a pretty conservative Republican who is now raising skepticism about the gutting of these programs. We're seeing a very similar thing in Georgia with Buddy Carter. They're seeing a big EV and battery manufacturing boom in there. He now doesn't want these programs to be gutted because of that. 18 Republicans have signed on to a letter raising concern about gutting these clean energy tax credits. And the Oklahoma governor, one of the most conservative states, has recently raised concerns about repealing these things, saying that a deal is a deal and businesses need this kind of reliability. So that is all just to go to show that bipartisan advocacy on this is not a lost cause. Economic growth, energy security, energy independence, public health, all of these things are on the line with respect to these programs. We all need to be flooding the zone right now. We need to be talking across the aisle to be really relaying this message that these investments are critical for the future of our country. And we need them to remain in place so that they can reach their full potential. So you'll find all of these resources and all of these tips right in our toolkit. And yeah, just grateful to be here. And thank you so much for the advocacy that I'm sure that you all are going to do.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Courtney, Maisie, Mandela. We have 10 minutes left for questions, and I'm already seeing a bunch of great ones in the chat. I also want to give a shout out to Rebecca, who in the chat noted that she now lives in a Republican congressional district and already sent an email into her member while we were chatting just here today. I saw another question while folks are thinking of other questions they want to send our way about whether or not you should call and email your Democratic members of Congress. Absolutely, yes. They all need to hear from us. They need to hear from us more than ever. Not only are these core programs of the Inflation Reduction Act under threat, but our entire democracy is under threat here. And we need to bolster and support incredible Democrats like Melanie Stansbury, like your senators and representatives from Vermont, sir, who put that question in the chat, and Republicans. They all need to hear from us. So Democrats need to support it in standing up and fighting back and holding the line and demanding that this administration adhere to the law. And Republicans need to know that their constituents support these common sense programs that are delivering cheap, clean energy and creating jobs in their district while lowering pollution. They all need to hear from us. And as AOC said on one of her great videos recently, the more friction that we can create against these guys who are just trying to break everything, the less stuff they can break. So let's create some friction by using this toolkit, picking up the phone, sending an email, going to a rally. It is working. We are starting to see them respond. We're starting to see the cracks in their autocratic power grab. And the more engagement that we flood into this system, the more we're going to be able to stop them. Mandela, Courtney, Maisie, anything else you want to offer on those questions of should you call Democrats or Republicans, or any other thoughts of wisdom on that question?
No, it's just oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Mandela. Go ahead,
Yeah.
Mandela.
Well, I was just gonna say, sometimes our friends need encouragement. That's the polite way I'm gonna put it. Because it just feels like too many people are giving up right now, and too many people are just sitting and letting the bad things happen. And as much as we want to hold people accountable who are even considering rolling back provisions of the IRA, we need to provide some sort of backstop to ensure that the folks who have already been supportive of IRA aren't just sitting there as this happens, but are participating in the organizing efforts, making their voices heard, not just sitting there quietly. Because look, this isn't the time where just casting a vote is enough. Like, you have to use every ounce of power and influence that you have. And even if at some point that effort is futile, the fact is, if you are able to engage other people, whether it is those small business owners who are benefiting from the IRA, but maybe didn't vote for that member of Congress, whether it's even the large businesses that are going to receive large tax breaks because they decided to put solar on their roof to save money on their utility bills. It's an opportunity to get more people on the same accord than we've had in some time. It's like you just never waste an organizing opportunity.
You're here. Couldn't agree more. Courtney, were you chiming in on that one too?
Could not have put it better than that, Mandela. That was great. I guess I would just say, like, from the perspective of, like, in Michigan, the auto industry growth is kind of on the line here with all of the EV investments coming in. And, like, the Democrats represent a lot of the areas where a lot of the union jobs are coming. Republicans represent a lot of the areas where the battery factories are coming. We need those Democrats talking to those Republicans and being as unified of a voice as possible and kind of communicating the stakes to that specific state. And that's kind of, the work that we need to be happening cross state.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. There's a bunch of questions in here about if you live in a Democratic district, can you contact a Republican? You can, but it's the most important to contact your member of Congress. They're more likely to listen to you. And you can say that exactly. Go talk to your Republicans across the aisle. I am a constituent. I care about this. Stand up, use your platform, like Mandela said, and go talk to your Republican colleagues to, stand up and fight back for these programs as well. Mandela, we have a specific question for you about advice to municipal leaders who may be interested in still installing solar or pursuing energy efficiency, upgrading HVACs, et cetera, but they're unsure if they're going to be reimbursed. What advice would you give those leaders in this moment?
I would say don't let the threat stop you. Go ahead and do it. One, you should do it anyway. It's great that we have these rebates incentives to make it a little easier. But honestly, like if you look at the long-term health and viability of your municipality, like you are still going to save money in the long run. You are still going to create much better, healthier spaces for the area for your jurisdiction. So yeah, I think you should absolutely go for it. Absolutely, it's the right thing to do regardless. And this knocking on wood, this nightmare can't last forever. And when there's an opportunity to shore up some of these things, when it's an opportunity to make this work a little bit more concrete, there's still that opportunity to recoup the benefits, even if they are temporarily taken away.
Here, here. And the more that these programs are utilized and uptaken, the more leaders will see how popular they are and hopefully beget that continuation of these programs. I couldn't agree more. Maisie, one for you on folks working to understand the budget reconciliation process. How long do you think that process is going to take? Are we talking weeks, months? What's the timeline?
Yeah, thanks for that question. So this process is expected to take some time because they're struggling to find common ground, looking definitely more like months. Plus, they also have to deal with the government funding deadline. So there's a lot going on. But that being said, they are already thinking through what policy they'll include in the reconciliation bill so that they're ready to go once they successfully pass the budget resolution. So that is why now and over the next couple of months is the prime time for your engagement with offices, even though it is expected to be a lengthy process.
Yeah, we're in this critical moment on both fronts, from the executive threat to the congressional threat. It is time to engage and push back and use our voices in all the ways we can, because it's a critical moment and opportunity. Speaking of moment and opportunity, I'm going to take one more question, I think, and then we're going to wrap. But if we don't have this at our fingertips now, this is a list of targets that we could send around later. But the congresswoman mentioned that the Republicans only have 3 seats for their majority in the House, which means that every single vote matters. They only need a few Republicans to stand up, and stand with them to push back against these terrible spending bills that their leadership is trying to pass. Do we have a list of key Republican targets who may be more friendly to IRA programs, or key Republican targets that we want folks to call? Maisie, any key Republicans that may be more climate friendly off the top of your head that you want to flag for folks? And if not, we can send it in follow up with our toolkit.
Yes, so we'll definitely be able to send this in follow up. There is a letter that I'm happy to just drop in the chat, but a number of Republicans who were supportive of preserving these investments. So I'll just go, yeah, exactly, the Garbarino letter, which I can drop in the chat right now. Or thank you, Katie.
Fantastic. And just as a reminder, those 18 Republicans who signed that letter, every single Republican member of Congress and Democratic and Independent member needs to hear from you. So don't let them win with the feeling of despair that is so tempting these days, because that's part of the strategy too. Apathy helps autocracy take hold. We are not going to let it. We're going to use our platforms. We're going to use our own little bully pulpits here, whether it's Twitter or email or picking up the phone or going to a rally. They're all there in the toolkit. We got lists of targets. We've got talking points. We've got template emails, so that you all can take hold of your power and use it, because it is working. So thank you all so much for joining us. Mandela, Courtney, Maisie, thank you for speaking with us today. Thanks to the hundreds of folks who listened in. And I know we're going to take this toolkit back and share it with your neighbors and speak up and make sure that we protect not just climate and clean energy programs, but our democracy writ large. And appreciate you all. We will talk soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye, panelists. Thank you, Mandela. Hope to see you soon.
Yeah, hope to see you soon too. Stay in touch and let me know how I can help.
Absolutely. Thank you for your fantastic